Welcome to Martini Time. Beautiful rainy day here in Blackstone, Virginia. And I'm also calling these talks Insight Improvs because what I'm going to be doing is just taking one of these artifacts I've collected on my personal museum of my journey and give a talk on it and see what comes up. So let's see what happens. First, I asked the frog to dive into the pond of the unconscious and come up with a golden insight, a golden ball. So let's see. Let's take this. Can you see? This is a Zippo lighter. It's still got the Zippo in it, the zip in it. And it's got dragon on it. The title of this talk is The Two-Faced Dragon. So, these Zippo lighters, if this will come out, have you ever had one? It's kind of like fire in the pocket. They're really great. You have a little cotton here. You have to get your little lighter fluid and fill it up. And then you have a wick in here, and there's flint, and you replace the flint, and you put this in here, and as long as you got your lighter fluid and your flint, it's good to go, and you can snap it and get the fire of the dragon. Now this Zippo lighter, I believe it's silver, was my father. Today is Veterans Day, this weekend. My father was a veteran, and he was really a veteran. He went to Annapolis and graduated in 1929. His first duty station was to go to, they sent him to the Yangtze River in China, where there were two river boats, the Taipei and his boat, I forgot its name. And remember, the Taipei was sunk by the Japanese. And for 3 years, he patrolled the Yangtze River, protecting European and American interests there. And it was the time of Chiang Kai-shek, Civil War, and the Sand Pebbles. A movie with Steve Queen was made about that river and the river boats. And it was, my father said, all those things that happened in the movie were kind of like a composite of all the things. But anyway, so he gave this to me, a dragon with two faces. Now my father spent 20 years at sea, from 1929 to 1950. So he was 3 years in China, came back, and went right to destroyers in the Atlantic. And then, of course, he met my mother in 1935. I was born in 1936. But all during that time, 1934 to 1940, 41, he was in destroyers, patrolling the Atlantic. And he was on two ships he were on got sunk after he got out of them. The Barry and the Reuben James. There was a song sung about the Reuben James. And so it was a very tumultuous, dangerous time. And then when the war started, he was sent to San Diego. We didn't know where he was going. And he went into amphibious landing, troop ships. It took the Marines to Guadalcanal in the Southern Islands, in South Pacific. And so he was in there until after the war, until finally he got shore duty in 1950 or 49. And he went to New Jersey as the commanding officer of the Jersey City Reserve Center. And for 4 years he had shore duty, and I had my father at home. And of course, we moved every 2 years trying to keep up with him. And then he retired in 1955. And he was bitter because he never got a command. You know, when you go to Annapolis, the whole point of being a naval officer, go to Annapolis, is to get a command. You got to have a ship. You're going to be a captain. Well, he was always on the staff of the admirals or executive officer. On all those destroyers, he was executive officer, lieutenant, then executive officer. So he never got past executive officer, never got a command, except after all these years, the Navy gave him a command. But they gave him an oil tanker to decommission. And that so pissed him off, he just retired. But then he had in 29 years. So anyway, he retired, but he retired bitter, full of resentment and anger. And so anyway, he died in 1996. He had a stroke in the around 1990, I guess, and he lost his memory. He could still function. It's kind of like being here, wherever you were. But he just didn't remember much or care much about the past or anything. He couldn't make choices. So he was no longer angry. And now why did I call this the two-faced dragon? Well, personally, as the son of this man, I only had 2 heart-to-heart encounters with him, because he was gone a lot. I even remember asking my mother if my father loved me, because when he came home from sea, he really didn't know how to handle a little boy, didn't know what to do with him. So I remember asking if he loved me. And also, in my early 20s, after he retired in 1955, they went to Jacksonville, where my mother's sister lived. And I would go down to visit, because I left home when I was 18, and joined the Navy myself. And so I'd go home, but always with the expectation that my father would reach out and accept me, and see me, and not to be somebody who that didn't measure up. I always felt I didn't measure up, so I wanted to measure up. So anyway, we went home. Now I'm describing the 2 faces of the dragon now. So we went home. I went down to Jacksonville, and it was when Martin Luther King was marching in St. Augustine. And so I got into a conversation. We were driving all day. Got into a conversation about civil rights. And it got heated. And it got hot. And finally, it ended with him like, "You'll never make a nigger lover out of me." You see. And so I just left and went into the bedroom, fell onto the bed, and I began to cry. And this hate came up. And I remember the color. It was green. And I pounded the pillow. And this green hate came up. I pounded it and pounded it. I didn't know I hated my father. I didn't know it was green. But at the same time, I remember a little background of love there. But the emotion, the feeling just came up. It did end one thing, because whenever I came home again, I stopped having expectations of my father finally accepting me, of holding his arms out to me. So then he had his stroke. Now that was one face of the dragon. Now the other face was, I guess it was 1997. I think he died in 98. And so he was up here, and he began bleeding in his stool, so we took him to the hospital, and a lot of things were wrong. And so I was early when I went to the hospital to see him, and my mother wasn't there. And so when I walked in the door, my father saw me, and he held out his arms. He held out his arms, and I rushed to him. And I think he was standing up. And I just hugged him, and I began to cry. And he said in my ear, "I want to die. I want to die." But I remember the love in that moment of all the love that had been buried there pouring through. And then in a few weeks he died with me and my mother standing by his side, very peacefully. And so the story here is that the dragon has two faces. So my father has two faces. The bad father, the good father. The hateful father, the loving father. You know, like Dickens in The Tale of Two Cities. The best of times, the worst of times. And so now when I look at my father, I'm able to hold the two faces together. You know? So I'm okay with him. I'm okay with him. And I'm okay with myself. Because if you're not okay with your father, you can't be okay with yourself. So the father has two faces, and we all have two faces. We all are a dragon with two faces. There's the good, and there's the bad. If we try to separate them and say, oh, I'm bad, I'm bad, I'm bad, I wish I could be good. Or if we say, oh, I'm so good, I'll never be bad. We have divided the dragon, and it won't make any fire. You got to have two sides to the dragon to make the Zippo light. You see? You see? You got to hold life's two faces together to make the fire of life, to make the fire of the dragon. Thanks for dropping in.